butted head with quite a few former Padres managers. What's your...
Thanks, Marty. I'm not going to butt heads with Stamen.
You're not?
No way.
Why not?
I just don't see that happening. Don't see it happening.
What did you think? Were you surprised?
No. I was surprised in the sense of, he hasn't coached before, but not surprised with the respect he has in the clubhouse, in the game, and being familiar with the organization. Great hire.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Marty Time TV and the Section 1904 podcast. I am Marty Caswell. That is Darren Smith. And I believe that is Dylan Hernandez of the California Post. We are brought to you by the all-new Jamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. And Dylan is here because the baseball season has officially begun. It's Padres and Dodgers, part one. How's everybody doing today?
To be honest, I was out a little bit later than I should have been. I've actually been really good recently. After I switched companies, right? I moved from the LA Times in, when was it, December? I had to take a physical to make sure that I was insurable. And so, yeah, no, right? And what I discovered was that I'm not shockingly in great health, I guess. My blood pressure was kind of high. So the last, couple months, I guess, I've been pretty careful about what I've eaten. And so I've lost 15 pounds. So let's just say that the kind of things kind of went off track last night. So
wow,
my wife will not be happy with me if she somehow sees this podcast.
Okay,
she doesn't.
Have you had to cut out those hideous Dodger dogs? Is that stuff?
Oh, that would be everything. I mean, I am I'll say this, I've been really good about this. It's just every day it's just salad and chicken. And can I cuss on this show?
Yes.
Yeah. Please do.
I fucking hate berries now. I've had so many fucking raspberries and blackberries and blueberries and that shit. It's weird, right? I'm fine with the unsalted nuts and stuff. I'm okay with that, but the berries are kind of yeah. So anyway, last night, let's just say that I got to taste the type of things that I usually kind of cut out with my life. So that was really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I mean, you seem to be centering this around the food, but a night in San Diego, it sounds like it wasn't just the food intake. It sounds like you had a good time rolling through Little Italy, Gaslamp. Where was it?
Little Italy. I ended up at I can't remember the name of the restaurant that we went to, but we ended up at the Waterfront, which it's kind of like a local.
Oh yeah.
A well-known establishment there, and we ran into some other people, so it was fun.
Good. I know Marty and I are sitting here I had every intention in the world because now that I'm working with San Diego Football Club, we had 3 matches in a week, which I know doesn't sound like a lot when you're covering baseball, but still it's it's kind of, you got to go through. And I had every intent in the world of blowing off some steam on a Sunday, and I didn't quite hit my goal. So now I'm a little bit jealous that Dylan Hernandez was rolling through Little Italy last night, and I could have gone and gotten into who knows what kind of nonsense with him.
It's just that it's too much, right? Because the truth is we had a day game in Anaheim yesterday, right? And then the team is going from here to Milwaukee after. So Jack Harris, our beat guy, who will go to Milwaukee. I'm not going to go to Milwaukee, right? So we carpooled down, and it was one of those okay, let's get there so we can go out. And it was kind of almost I think we wanted it too much,
Yeah.
Right? So. We're pressing at the plate, so to speak, and sometimes bad things happen, and you end up drinking a lot of water the next day.
Oh, good, man. I'm glad. I'm glad that you guys come down and do what a lot of Angelinos do. You come down and support local commerce, support local business. People have been doing that for a long time. So it must be a big series, though, Dylan Hernandez, if you are down here, because this is regular season baseball on May 18th, 19th, and 20th, and here you are again. You just mentioned California Post. Not the beat reporter, but it must be a big series if it brought you down into our fair city.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of the truth is that we're trying to I think the worst thing you can have as a writer is if your team is the team that you cover is either really good or really bad, and the Dodgers unfortunately are really good, right? And kind of doesn't really play into my wheelhouse if we're going to be honest, right? And so you're trying to kind of find things obviously over the course of the season because they're going to be playing in October, right? I don't think there's any question they're going to be playing baseball in October. And so you kind of try to find things throughout the year that kind of keep people's interest up. And in that sense, the Dodgers-Padres rivalry has been the best thing for us, right? Because it's the best rivalry in baseball of this decade. Now, unfortunately, right after Peter Seidler passed away a few years ago, I think what we've seen on the Padres end is kind of the scaling back of spending, right? Now, granted, they were able to make those, trades last year at the trade deadline, right? But it was kind of they're dealing their prospect capital, which is going to come at a cost, obviously, right down the road. It's going to take away from their roster and stuff. And so you're kind of looking at this, and it did feel like this thing's kind of dying, if we're going to be honest, right? Like I'm looking at the Padres right now. And yeah, I know they're right there with the Dodgers, but the truth is like I don't see how this is even remotely sustainable, right? They can't. You're not going to win with your starting pitchers going like right. You're lucky to get 5 innings out of them, right where I mean, their run production is just like terrible, right? And I understand like their 2 best guys aren't going right now, but even then, like the fact that like nobody's hitting, I think is like a very big problem. Just does not look remotely sustainable to me. But the one thing that kind of gives you hope now, honestly, is the fact that this team got sold, right? And we saw this in LA in, God, it's been like forever now, right? It's 2012, I guess, right? Where like all of a sudden, like this team that was like bankrupt, that couldn't spend money. And the next thing you know, they go off, right? And I think they kind of let their intentions know very quickly. They re-signed. I remember it was Andre Ethier got an extension. They signed Yasiel Puig, who nobody has ever heard of, to a $40 million contract after watching him take batting practice. And then they swing that huge trade for like Adrian Gonzalez. And that was really kind of the deal that it's like, okay, guys, like we're here to spend, right? And we're going to replace the Yankees as the big spending team in baseball. Now, I have no idea, obviously, and I haven't seen any quotes, at least from like the owners, right? I know Kevin Acey's written a couple stories where, it's like, well, people that know the prospective owners, blah, 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 whatever, are kind of expecting this is possible. But we haven't seen anything too strong in terms of like the direction that the franchise is going to take. That said, it at least like gives them some hope, right? Because had this, let's just say they had kind of stayed in this state of like limbo, nothing good would have happened for the Padres. Right. They would have kind of continued to get worse. And now this makes it kind of interesting, honestly, because like we could see, right, theoretically, I guess, right, the sale could be approved officially, the owners' meetings in June next month. And so then at that point, you got a couple months to go before the trade deadline. And you know what, if these owners want to be aggressive and say like, hey, you know what, fuck it, like we're going to go for it, they have the opportunity to do that. And that can really kind of re-energize this thing because, right, like if we're going to be honest right now, this Dodgers-Padres thing, I do feel like at this point is really kind of driven by, kind of San Diego's like little brother complex, right? More than anything. Like, I don't know. I could be wrong. And maybe you guys can tell me that. But like, I'm not looking at the Padres right now and thinking like, oh my God, like the Dodgers might somehow actually lose the division to them. I have thought that in the past. I don't think that right now. And so, again, I think the kind of looming presence of these new owners, I think, is like really healthy for this rivalry. And I hope that they kind of go back and continue spending. Obviously, they spent a record amount on the team. And look, like spending doesn't guarantee anything, right? Like you can turn into the Mets and people will make fun of you even more. But like, I'm at least there's some kind of hope there. And yeah, I think this will kind of help kind of set the, because like right now I do think, right, they have the Padres obviously have good parts. They have, I assume King and Vasquez are going to start. I haven't seen like the official rotation, but I think the way they were lined up, right, it was King today and then Vasquez in the last game, right? So you have like 2 good quality starting pitchers there that you can build like a staff around, right? It's the other like 3 guys I think that you're worried about, so if you can go out and add an arm or 2 right down the road, and then like right whatever the lineup, I assume like Machado and Tatis, like it can't get any worse for them. So they'll start hitting at some point, obviously. But then it's about filling out that lineup, getting another batter or 2. And look, it's going to have to be like a pretty aggressive, I think, moves at the deadline for them to push the Dodgers. But it's all within play now. And I think in that sense, this because right now I think. In a short series like this, right? Again, you got King and Vasquez going. You can highlight what you have if you're the Padres, right? And you can kind of be like, okay, this is kind of who we are. We just kind of need more help to stand the rigors of a 162 game season. And at least I think from the Padres standpoint, if they can show that they can hang with the Dodgers here, I do think it kind of plays out well and probably like it further incentivizes the owners to go out and to say, hey, you know what? Go out, get the pieces that we need so we could actually beat this team because we've shown that we can hang with them.
Dylan, do you have maybe skepticism on the Padres really challenging the Dodgers for the division because of the uncertainty of the ownership and not knowing what AJ Preller, how aggressive he can be at the deadline, adding payroll, adding guys, or because their 3 most important players aren't hitting at all. I mean, they have not been productive. And it's just, we're talking May 18th and we're still talking about, well, if only this happens, and they just haven't done it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, right, kind of the view from LA, at least, and this is probably like a gross oversimplification of things, but like, is that, right, Manny Machado is like the team's like spirit animal, right? And they kind of ride whatever kind of emotional wave that he's on at that point. If it's going good, like, obviously it looks like they're unstoppable. And when it's not going well, things kind of tend to stall. So I think a lot of it, and I saw some pretty, I thought what looked like pretty mature quotes from him about, right, obviously, like, he wants to get going, but the team is winning and this and that. So, as long as he can kind of keep it together, I think you kind of feel okay about that. But like, I do think like these stars, like, they're the ones that kind of drive this thing. And, like, look, with the Dodgers right now, they're not good offensively right now either. I mean, they just play the Angels, so they look great, but like, that's like a AAA team over there, if we're going to be honest, right? So they haven't shown that they can hit. And like, what's the problem there? It's Ohtani, right? It's the fact that Ohtani's pitching, he looks tired. I mean, that in itself is like a kind of a funny drama that's unfolding over there. But I think, if you say that, okay, well, the Dodgers go according to how Ohtani's going, for the Padres, it's how is Machado doing, right? And so, and look, we've seen it both ways, right? We've seen, good Manny, in which case the Padres are going to be right there. And then we've seen bad Manny, where the team finishes however many games out and isn't even like remotely in contention. So I think, look, Manny Machado is really, really good, obviously, right? He's a really talented player. We've all kind of seen that. I'm not going to write him off just because, again, even like in the little time that he was with the Dodgers, like, we saw him do incredible things. And so, I think if you're the Dodgers, if you're kind of viewing this from an LA standpoint, you have to kind of view this with the idea that Manny Machado is going to turn into Manny Machado again. But I could also see, yeah, sure, like, if he doesn't show up this year, right, if he can't get things going and he kind of starts to sour the mood, right, I think more than even just a performance, it's kind of how he kind of carries himself. Because when he's feeling good about himself and he's kind of swaggering around and he's stepping up to the plate, like, looking like, I know I'm going to hit in this at bat, whether that actually happens or not, that influences everybody else in that clubhouse, right, in that dugout. And so, to me, that's kind of the most important thing. And we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of always considered the faucet of the drain of the clubhouse, right? He either gives to it or he sucks it out. So, hey, I want to go back to ownership for a second, Dylan, because you cover and have written a ton about the Dodgers all throughout the years. Technically, there is a connection between Padres ownership, right? Should Jose Feliciano and Quincy Jones get pushed through, which everybody thinks they will, there is now like an established business partnership between Todd Boehly of the Dodgers and Jose Feliciano through a consortium that they built together called Blueco. I know people are sick and tired of hearing me talk about Chelsea. I'm fucking tired of talking about Chelsea. I really am. But it pops up like, this is what we know, like that Feliciano's part of this private equity group that owns 60-something% of Chelsea Football Club in London. And his business partner, one of them is a guy, Todd Boehly, who's one of the owners of the Dodgers. How do you ever like approach that? Since you've been around it a little bit, I'm trying to think if I've ever, if you've ever written or talked about Chelsea or what Todd Boehly's relationship is or his connection is. But now you do have these two guys who are business partners in this asset in London, which nobody is happy with there, that has lost a record amount of money, $350 million, I think. No Premier League club has ever lost more money than that. Just lost in the FA Cup final over the weekend. Anyway, I don't really know like what that has to do with anything. I mean, maybe that has nothing to do with the cost of potatoes around here, but it is a connection, and it is something, that I think I've sort of wondered about. You have experience with this. We do not. When we've had an owner here, he's primarily just been the primary owner and the chairperson of the Padres. We've not had somebody who's had these other assets around the world. So what do you make of like these guys that have these, multi-team ownership properties all around the globe?
Yeah, well, so with the Dodgers, right? Like, so Todd Boehly is probably, and he's become a very, very divisive figure, by the way, in England, right? I mean, they have spent a lot of money, seemingly kind of unnecessarily, right? I mean, I think that you have, kind of I don't know how soccer literate people, our viewers here are, but, it's like one thing, there's kind of the Lamine Malls of the world that you would pay, okay, whatever, he costs $1 billion, okay, pay it, right? Because he's a legitimate difference maker. the thing is like the difference between like one $100 million player and another $100 million player usually is not that big. And so they kind of had a team that was right. They bought a team that was already filled with good players. And then they went out and basically bought like another team. But like the problem was that the guys that they brought in weren't like significantly better than the guys that they just replaced. And so, to me, when I kind of look at that, you kind of question like the I guess the soccer acumen of them. Now that said, again, like with the Dodgers, right? Boley is not like the control person. They have Andrew Friedman there, right? They went out, they hired somebody to take care of these things. I think with Chelsea, kind of the thing is that Boley's like in the locker room, right? Boley's talking to the press. Boley's out in front, coming up with these ideas of like all-star games, which for various cultural reasons just would not work in England. Right. And so people are kind of making fun of him and stuff. And it sounds like he's kind of like butting in, getting involved with a lot of decisions. I do think, the kind of the healthiest dynamic is where, the owner hires a baseball person that he trusts, lets him run the team. And it's just kind of basically like, hey, how much money do you need? What can I do to financially support you? Right.
Peter Sadler.
Yeah. Right. And where the executives, right, the GM, so to speak, the president of baseball ops, is not afraid to ask for that money either, right? Because you kind of don't want to be in that situation where it's like, okay, like I can go and kind of beg for like $10 million more to get this reliever at the deadline, but if it doesn't work out, I might get fired, right? And so all of a sudden, kind of the motive stopped just kind of being about the winning part, right? And I think, again, with the Dodgers thing, this seems to be like a very healthy dynamic. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've agreed with everything they've done, but, like it works, right? They have kind of this absentee owner, right? Mark Walter, the truth is like never around. He lives in Chicago. He comes by a couple times a year, and they kind of more or less like let Friedman kind of run this thing. And so like, yeah, like I think, a lot of this is going to kind of depend on like what type of owner is Feliciano going to be, right? And Quincy Jones, like what kind of owners are they going to be? Are they going to be the types that are like all around all the time, which in some ways is great, right? Because you do want owners that are around all the time because then they can feel the pulse of the fan. They can get like direct feedback, right? Even like little things like, maybe fans are like not happy with like the onion dispensers, right? When they buy their hot dogs, whatever. And this will give them actually an opportunity to hear that type of feedback like firsthand and improve the fan experience, improve the product on the field. Now that said, you don't want them to be right. I mean, I think it cuts both ways. It's funny that that I mentioned the onion dispenser because I remember that from Frank McCourt was owning the Dodgers and they did some renovations to the stadium and we're kind of like walking around. And I remember like Frank was like, calls me over and is like really proud of like his onion dispenser, right? It's like, yeah, like I listened to the people. They're not happy with the way like the onions, right? They didn't like just kind of the bucket of diced onions. And so like now we have this like dispensing thing. And he was really proud of it. And I think that's cool, right? Now the problem is that like Frank was around all the time and Frank started getting involved in baseball decisions and kind of created this atmosphere where if things didn't work out, all of a sudden people were like afraid that they were going to lose their jobs and it affected how they did their jobs. And so look, it's hard, right? Because like if I spent $4 billion on a team or whatever, they spent to buy this team. Yeah, I want input, right? And I'm going to have players that I like and players that I don't like, and I'm going to have opinions on these things. And it's just kind of like, how do you kind of stay out of that, right? At the same time, like if they're players that like the fans like really, really love, I do think that like that's a priority too, right? You don't want to trade like, a guy, like a fan favorite type guy if you don't have to, right? And so there's kind of this like, I don't know where that line is between being like, perfectly involved and like overly involved, but that's kind of part of like ownership thing. Right. And the thing is, I'll say this, right, is that all these people that buy these teams, they've obviously worked themselves into a situation where they're successful enough in their particular field to accumulate the wealth to be able to buy a Major League Baseball team. This is a much, much different business than anybody can imagine because it happens in public, right? You fuck over a guy in a real estate deal, nobody knows that it happened, right? Maybe people in that world are aware and maybe you start getting a bad reputation, but for the most part, it's not a big deal. Here, right, like you let a guy go, right, whatever, like a popular veteran player, whatever, he's a bench guy, you want to save $5 million, whatever, which in the big scheme of things is not a big deal. You let that guy go, the fans get mad. All of a sudden now that attention falls on you, right? And so the way I've just kind of seen people, right, in various sports, the way they kind of deal with that attention, it kind of varies again, right? Some people are very sensitive about it. Some people kind of double down. Like Artie Moreno right now is in like, right, the owner of the Angels is in complete like, I don't give a fuck mode, right? Like I'm running this franchise into the ground. I hear what all you guys are saying, but I don't give a shit, right? I'm gonna fucking die with this thing, and I'm gonna take it to the bottom of the ocean. And so, you know, and look, like Artie was a guy who, like, at the very beginning, like when he first bought the team, right? Like, I mean, he lowered the beer prices,
Right.
like a praised owner,
Man of the people. He was popular because of that fact,
Yeah,
and then
that was his
the
onions
reality
moment.
set in.
yeah, right. And so, you know, these things also kind of change over time, right? The way, right, and then even the people that like you hire again to run like the baseball side of things, I do think like change over time. I do think Andrew Friedman, his like basic philosophy has changed from the time that he first came in, right? This was a completely analytics driven, you know, we're going to prioritize, right? Because I think the fundamental thing that they kind of thought was the playoffs are a crapshoot, right? And so we're going to prioritize depth over, you know, quantity over quality. And so, hey, instead of like, you know, going out and get the best player on the market, what we're going to do is we're going to, you know, have like 2 right fielders and 2 of this and 2 of that, because that's what's going to get us in the playoffs. And since the playoffs are a crapshoot anyway, let's just get in the playoffs as many times as we can and like see what happens. They did not win like that. And so I do think that this reality kind of set in at some point where they're like, oh, you know what we need to do? Like, let's actually go out and get the best player available. And I really think that the acquisition of Mookie Betts, right? It was known that Betts was available. They went out, they got the best player available on the market. And since then, they've been going after those types of guys, right? It's been Ohtani, it's been Freddie Freeman. Now, there is kind of a downside to that, right? The things that they feared, right, when they weren't doing that, the things that the excuses that they used to kind of justify, which is like, well, you know, you build a team through free agency, they're going to get old together, and then what? Well, you know what? Like we might already be there with the Dodgers.
Then you go get Kyle Tucker.
Yeah, right. And then so, you know, like these things kind of change, right? And so like you could be like a good owner at first, become a bad one. You could be a bad one who becomes a good one, and it's like people, right? There are people involved, and again, that said, the microscope that these owners are going to be under, I don't think they're quite aware like what they're stepping into yet, because especially like in a market like this where this is like a great sports market, right? Whatever it is, you know, I know maybe you might be limited in like the type of the amount of revenue you can generate, right? With the population, people here really, really care, right? And if they fuck things up, they will, right? I mean, it's like the Spanoses, right? The Spano, you guys, you know, I'm sure, right? If I'm a Spanos, like I probably don't want to be like walking around here too much, right? Like
ever.
There's certain places.
Ever, Dylan. Never. Yeah. Don't ever come back. They've never come back.
Yeah, like in LA, like you generally don't. You have to do a lot to get to that level, right? I mean, Frank McCourt like had to have a guy like half beaten to death in his parking lot for people to really kind of turn on him, right? And San Diego, I just think it's just, again, just the passion that the people here have for their teams. These owners are really going to be under the microscope. And look, like the flip side of that, though, is look at Peter Seidler, right? Look how quickly he became like such a beloved institution, and the fact that like right as soon as when he started putting money into the team, like what happened? Like the fans responded, right?
Yep.
So, you know, I think this is also like an opportunity for this to be a really rewarding experience for them. And like, look, my guess is again at that valuation, $3.9 billion, at a time when like the sport is crying poor. You know, like, oh no, like we got to lock the players out. Like we have no money. Like they went out and they just spent like a record amount of money on the team. My guess is that there's some intention there to like, okay, well, why would you spend all that money if like you're gonna like turn it into like the McDonald's of baseball franchises? That doesn't make too much sense to me. So I think the expectation around the game is that like, yeah, like the Padres are gonna probably start putting money in. And then it's right. This stuff's hard. And then it's about like being smart, hiring the right people. You know, and is that AJ Preller? He certainly kept them competitive. He hasn't gotten them over the top yet. Now, you know, you could have said that. Said you could have said the same thing about Andrew Friedman before 2020, before they won that World Series. So
AJ Preller's teams are certainly never boring. I'm just curious, Dylan, because you mentioned at the top that you don't think that the Padres roster as currently constructed can catch the Dodgers. Is this the worst version of the Dodgers that the Padres are going to face? I love the headline, the California Post, Bleak Snell. I mean, he is back on the IL, and who knows when he's back. Tyler Glasnow is out. Edwin Diaz, he's out, and he's got a cockfighting thing somewhere. So I don't know. I mean, you mentioned Shohei Ohtani was struggling. He broke out against the Angels, but he hasn't been this. He's a guy looking for his offensive rhythm as well. What are the Padres getting in this team?
Yeah, no, I think, look, I think the Dodgers, they know what's at stake here. You know, they played, I think it was earlier, who came into town? I guess it was Atlanta, right? You know, they had the best record in baseball at the time. And look, they played them well, right? I do think that the Dodgers, they kind of understand, like, okay, like teams are coming after us. They're cognizant of the fact that like the Padres are there, right? There's a history here, right? And this is like a legitimate thing, by the way. Like a lot of, you know, the truth right now is that Dodgers Giants is almost like entirely like a fan driven kind of rivalry at this point because the players don't really dislike them, right? Like here, there's going to be, right? And you guys have not been introduced yet to Mr. Dalton Rushing, right?
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you
He's the
mentioned
new
him.
main
Right.
character.
Yeah, he is going to be. I mean, again, you talk about as a writer needing things to kind of get you through the season. Like that guy has been like a gift from the gods, right? Like, yeah, and
That's
he's
the guy.
right.
All right.
And at some point, there's going to be some like friction, whatever. And I think, look, again, there's been history, right? This is like a legitimate rivalry. This is not like some kind of make believe, like, right? The media just kind of like inventing something out of nothing. This is like a legitimate rivalry. And I think the way the Dodgers kind of go about their business and the way the Padres kind of go about their business is, again, it's very different, right? This is, you know, you got like kind of the, you know, very outwardly emotional, you know, Manny Machado on one side, and you kind of got like the, you know, just kind of go about my business, Shohei Ohtani on the other side, right? And I do think, you know, Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, these are guys that like they show up in the clubhouse, they know what they're going to do work-wise that day. It's very much like, okay, I need to go hit, I need to go do this, I need to go do that. It's very kind of routine, and you don't actually see them around too much, right? This is kind of, in a lot of ways, they're pretty boring in that like they're there to like do a job. And so I don't think that, like I think that look, everybody's going to kind of know what's at stake here. They're going to feed off the crowds, right? And I do think that if you're the Dodgers, what you want to do is send this kind of statement to the Padres that like, you can't play with us, right? That's like, if I'm the Dodgers, right? And look, it's going to be Yamamoto. Yamamoto and Ohtani are going to be pitching in this series. And, you know, we talked about King and Vasquez on the other side. Those are going to be kind of statement games, right? I mean, just like imagine, like if King beats Yamamoto today, what a boost that is for the Padres. I do think on the flip side, you know, Yamamoto, it didn't go great for him in the last start. That said, you know, he got hit by the 8-9 hitters. I think he knew he was just kind of like he, you know, the truth was he was probably just trying to get some quick outs, like left some balls over the plate. But I think he felt really good about the way his last start went, right? He was telling me afterwards, like, hey, I'm good. Like, it's going to be fine after this. So he's kind of hitting his stride right now. You know, Ohtani as a pitcher right now is arguably the best pitcher in baseball. And so they're throwing their guys. And again, I think that kind of depending on who kind of wins these games, it will be kind of a big statement setter, right? And again, for both teams, right? I think because if you're the Padres and you take, say, 2 of 3 in the series, and right, they can say, hey, you know what? Like, yeah, we have everybody here, but you know, Machado's not hitting and Tatis hasn't been hitting. And now our new owners are going to come in and reinforce us at the trade deadline. That sends a statement. I think if you're the Dodgers, like you said, right, they got some guys out right now. We're not at full strength, and we still kicked your ass, right? And so I think that this is going to be kind of like a building point. Now there's a series. Is it down here again next month? Right? They play again.
Yes, another one in June. Yep.
Yeah, right. So
it can be demoralizing if the Padres still can't figure it out offensively. It can be absolutely demoralizing if they get crushed. But if they play close games and these guys still aren't hitting, and they get that sort of week that Gavin Sheets had this last week, then who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if you're led by Gavin Sheets and Ty France and you take 2 out of 3 this week, it's like, yeah, okay, like our guys aren't even doing anything. Dylan, I realize this is like a question that should have been asked years ago, but with the Dodgers having like no hesitation spending money, why didn't they ever make a run at Manny Machado? I mean, they took him for a test drive for the second half of that year, and then by all indications, they just were not interested. Any insight as to why they were not interested in Manny?
Yeah, I don't think, you know, I think, again, right, because he's the type of guy, he's a clear, like, alpha in your clubhouse. And I don't know, I just think that they kind of just went, you know, they saw the way he kind of went about things every day. And I'm not sure that was, like, their cup of tea necessarily, right? I mean, obviously, look, he's a good player, you know, but it is kind of like, okay, well, how do we want to kind of try to build this team? And look, like, as a reporter, to be honest, right? Like, you want to have like a Manny Machado in there, good or bad, like, because he's interesting, right? I mean, because the truth is, you know, the Mookie Betts, the Freddie Freemans, and the Shohei Ohtanis of the world, like, they're gonna say what the things they should say, right? Now, that said, that does seem to kind of be like what the Dodgers want, right? It's like, okay, we're gonna, you know, especially because of the heavy influence of the analytics stuff. right? I mean, even like selling that to the players took a while, right? It wasn't like, Friedman comes in and it's like, hey, like, I mean, because the way a lot of the players kind of took that, honestly, right, was, what, you're teaching me how to hit? Like, who the fuck are you, right? And there was pushback initially, right? And so I do think they kind of want, a kind of quieter vibe where there isn't going to be too much, right? And I think, like, and to that point, I do think it kind of took them a while to get on the same page with Kershaw, right? By the end, I think they kind of realized, what, we kind of need each other, right? Where I think Kershaw kind of started to really kind of, I mean, I still remember this, that first year they shift behind Kershaw. He gives up a single to where, the shortstop has been standing for like 100 years. The guy's not there. And he's got he looks at the clubhouse. That was the last time they shifted that year behind him, and he's like, what are these people coming in and doing? But after a while, like, right, they proved themselves by making the playoffs every year. And I think Kershaw kind of appreciated, okay, like, as a guy that doesn't have a ring, right, that didn't have a ring for like a really long time, these guys are putting me in a position where I can, like, be in contention for one every year. And I think he kind of started to appreciate that. I think, there is kind of like a bit of a leadership vacuum in that Dodgers clubhouse, right? It has been probably for like a while now. I think guys have, probably like Justin Turner, like, he felt like he had to kind of take it, but I don't think it came like naturally to him. I think it was kind of more like, oh, like, somebody needs to speak up in these times, and I guess I'm going to be that guy, right? And so, but there's kind of been that. And I think any kind of culture setting presence, like the way Kershaw was kind of viewed as a good thing, because look, well, Kershaw was not, as a starting pitcher, I think he always probably underestimated the influence he had, like, in the clubhouse, right? So, that said, the other players, like, really wanted his approval, right? And I do think that had like a, maybe not like a direct type of leadership effect, but it was very kind of, it helped kind of create the culture that they have right now. And again, like, kind of going back to the original question about Manny, well, I just think it was just a little bit different from what that they envisioned. Right now, I personally love the big characters. I mean, I'll keep telling people this. The most fun I've had covering the Dodgers was in 2008. I'm totally dating myself here, but like, those few months that Manny Ramirez was here and was hitting the shit out of the ball before he tested positive for drugs were the most fun, like, 3 months, right? Because he was great on the field. He was an interesting character. But again, like, things, you bring in characters like that, unfortunately, there's gonna be good and there's gonna be bad, right? And we saw, obviously, Yasiel Puig was a huge character that kind of came here, and that was a bit of a roller coaster experience. And so, Machado's probably like a little bit closer to that. And again, kind of going back to what I mentioned earlier about kind of the organizational, like, kind of philosophy of, let's make the playoffs every year. That is kind of that is like priority number one. And while I think they have probably, right, they probably right now, I mean, it's kind of been the opposite, where, again, in recent years, because they're going after the higher end guys, what happens now, if one of those guys gets injured, the drop off to the next guy is much bigger than it used to be before. So I do feel like they're more vulnerable now in the regular season than they were kind of in the early Dodger year, right, in the early Guggenheim years. But they, that said, they still prioritize stability. And again, I just think that, like, when they looked at Manny Machado, it's just kind of like, okay, the everyday thing, I'm not sure this is our cup of tea, and that we want to build around that.
Yeah, I can see that, because, like you said, he's the alpha. So, even though you do have these quirky personalities inside of that clubhouse, you just brought one up there, rushing, but like, when you're building around an alpha like that, that's one of those things. And the Padres are willing to say, yeah, like, we'll let this guy be the alpha inside of our clubhouse. So just kind of fits our personality, even if it's just for like anti-Dodger sort of sentiment as well, right? Like, there is something to it. If he's not going to be the alpha there, like, we can turn him into the alpha here, and it might make a little bit of sense for that whole kind of renegade pirate ship that we got going on. So cool. All right. Well, we'll see you then. Is that like I'm looking at the pitching here. Who are we gonna
Yamamoto
get?
King, Sheehan,
Yamamoto
Canning,
King.
Ohtani
Yeah.
versus Vasquez on Wednesday.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I don't know what's going to happen over the next 3 days, but I know, it'll be the most important thing in the world for both of these fan bases. So that's
sure.
always a lot of fun when you can get a series like this in May, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's going to
Well,
be
good luck
loud.
to you guys.
All right.
All right.
I'm good. Dylan, it is good. Thank you for the invite again. If you're going out and running it back next time, let's make sure we convene here, because
I think next time my kids will be on summer vacation, so they're going to be coming down. So
Oh boy. So
Dylan,
SeaWorld and the
Dylan,
zoo.
that with Dylan.
we're going to be writing those, like, those 4-person bicycles and walk away.
Yeah. They'll be taking the ferry to Coronado, right?
Oh,
Exactly.
boy.
We went out with Dylan one night in Atlanta and had a pretty
goodness.
good time where he was telling us some stories about, remember the name? Was it Vladimir Schfunt?
Oh,
Yes.
God.
The psychic. Was it Jamie McCourt psychic or was that Frank McCourt?
The thing, man, is that like rich people are weird, right? Like you don't know how they spend their money, and like this is like a legitimate thing. Like you could have an owner, like the Dodgers did, who's gonna hire a psychic to spend millions of dollars instead of like I mean they could have, I don't know, invested that like in a new expand their analytics department. No, they hired a psychic. And that's when fans kind of really start to get pissed off, is when, if those things kind of start to leak. So you don't know, right? I mean, right now, what these people have done, obviously, is they put their money forward and it's given entry into the party, and we have no idea what they're actually going to do now that they're inside. But again, like usually if you spend that much money on a ticket, you're going to, I think, be fairly responsible for it, I think they understand what they bought. They understand the importance of the institution they just purchased, but we'll see. Yeah.
Vladimir Schfunt. I remember we were in tears listening to some of the stories about the Dodgers. Jamie McCourt hiring this psychic a million years ago.
So for people that aren't familiar, like he saved her, like she had like an eye infection or something, and she had gone to all these specialists, and I guess they were afraid, right? She was afraid she was going to lose her eye. And one day he just puts his hand on her eye, whatever, and cures her. And so he convinces them that he can watch TV from his home in Boston, watch a game, and beam positive energy to the Dodgers. And it was funny because one of those years they lost like 90 games, and McCourt, right? And we at the times we got like the emails between McCourt and Spunt. This guy had an agent. And the guy's complaining, right? McCourt's complaining, like, we lost, we paid this guy all this money and we lost 91 games this year. And the response is beautiful. The guy tells him, well, Vladimir thinks that without him, you guys would have lost 15 more. Right? So obviously the story comes out, and I'm bothering. Joe Torre was the manager at the time, so I'm bothering him, right? Like, this guy, Clay, right? Like, I was telling him, like, this guy had a bigger impact. He might have had a bigger impact on the team than you did. I mean, this is like a 15. I mean, he's claiming to be like a 15-WAR guy, right? I mean, he's better than A-Rod at this point. Do you guys need to bring this guy back? Like, were you guys cheating, right? Is this cheating? I did call Major League Baseball. It was kind of funny. I remember somebody over there at the commissioner's office picks up the phone and they're like, "Hey, that's an interesting story you guys got going." And I go, "Yeah, speaking of which," and they're like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, like, please tell me you're not going to make me talk about this." And I'm like, "Yeah, like, I want to know, is this considered cheating, right? Because, I'm sure you guys are familiar that in certain parts of the world, witchcraft is outlawed in relation to soccer, right?" So I was like, "No, is this cheating?" And I did ask Joe Torre, because I think he was there. They had Spunt still on the payroll in 2008. And that was a year that they won. They got Manny Ramirez, and they won the division. And I said, like, is your division title tainted because you guys have of a psychic, right? And that's what I call like a quicksand question, and that no matter what way you answer it, like, it's going to go bad, right? Because if you say you didn't cheat, what you're saying is that your owner got swindled, right? And if you cheated, then you cheated, right? So Joe very smartly kind of just like, "I'm not talking about this. Like, please stay away from me." But he was a good sport about it, and I think we had a good laugh about that.
Dylan, you're the best storyteller. By the way,
Amazing.
I have one beef, because you are brand new now with the California Post, because you did pass your physical. Congratulations on that, Dylan. But formerly with the LA Times, used to always read you. Why? And I enjoy your work at the California Post. California Post, sports. You cover all the sports teams in California. Why is there no one covering the San Diego Padres or STFC? Let's go. Where's the regular P guy?
I assume we're going. Look, we've been slowly expanding our staff. We have a very small staff right now. This is like way above my pay grade. I think we have like 9 writers right now, including like one in the Bay Area. So I do think we're in the process of like adding people. I assume, given that, look, like, to be honest, I'm not gonna lie. Like,
we're in California.
Like the LA Post, right? Like, given the way like we're covering things. That said, because they called it California, and again, I have no say in any of these decisions. I've gone from being a general columnist at the LA Times, covering everything, to now just doing baseball. Right? I'm just a bit Dodger columnist now. So if anything, I have less power than I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
But
You know what Marty just did to you? Marty just gave you a quicksand question, like right there. We're just watching you slowly go into the quicksand here, not having any answer to this question. Marty just totally did to you what you did to Joe Torre.
Yeah, well, given the fact that it's called the California Post, right? I would think that at some point, again, given the fact that, right, and the fact that, like, we've started hiring people in the Bay Area. We have one person up there. Given the fact that, like, we're starting to do that, my guess is that at some point we will have somebody down here in San Diego.
Maybe the Padres can win a series or win this division. That'll be enough to get your bosses to go ahead and have a full-time person covering San Diego. Dylan,
my boss, by the way, Ryan Costeca, the sports editor, is a huge Padres fan, right? So, like, today, I don't know, right? I wrote something today, and basically the first, like, 5 paragraphs is just me just shitting on the Padres. Those paragraphs were written for him almost.
Right. How are they doing this? Oh, really? So well, I'll make sure that I clip this and I send it to him to, like, hey, put the pressure on. Listen, I know the Padres got in late last night. They're actually having a later clubhouse, and I don't think they're going to take BP today. I'm sure the Dodgers got hurt earlier, so hopefully the Dodgers were out partying in the same area as you, Dylan, and they'll be a little bit banged up when they get to Petco Park. So we'll see what happens. All right, Yamamoto and Michael King. Let's go.
Like, we'll see. Right? Maybe Yamamoto's like staggering around on the mound, but I'm not sure I'd see that. It's
I
kind of
doubt that.
Boring team. Yeah,
could be a nice little vacation for them. You never know.
All right, guys.
As well.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. This was a blast, Dylan. I'll see you at Petco Park in a few hours, I'm sure. I am Marty Caswell. That is Darren Smith. That's Dylan Hernandez. Thank you for watching Marty Time TV and the Section 1904 podcast. Don't forget, you can like and subscribe to Darren's podcast. Great stuff. His own Substack, plenty of stuff on SDFC and the World Cup interviews as well. So thanks so much for watching. We're brought to you by the all-new Hummel Casino Resort, the Players Place. See you at Petco Park. Have a great day, everybody.
I think it's high. I think that we have a lot of talented people. I think we have, some Hall of Famers in here and some perennial all-stars, and now I think that it's just us coming together, finding our identity as an offense, and showing up with intent every day to win each game. And I think step one for this group is to win the games that we're supposed to win. That's what good teams do.